Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection Podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection Podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Early morning for Stephen and I, but I believe in the afternoon or close to the evening for our two guests that are joining us today. We are continuing our international trek across the globe as we head into Finland. And again, a huge shout out to Cassie Camara for making these connections for Stephen and I and our two guests that are coming with us today as we talk about wolves from Finland and all the things that are going on there. We have the project manager for LIFE BOREALWOLF, but also I believe Susi Life Projects, and she will correct me if I'm wrong there. We have Madeleine Nyman, and then the Senior Planning Officer for the Finnish Wildlife Agency, Lyly. So thank you both for joining us and being gracious with the time and everything like that. How are you both doing? I'll start with Mary. How are you?
Great, thanks. I'm very excited to be here.
No, thanks for joining us.
Really looking forward to these discussions.
Yeah, and Madeleine, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And I'm happy that you got up that early so that we could meet.
Yeah. Of course, it's fine. And we love, like I said, we love the conversations, and we're really gracious that you both are here with us and willing to talk and, you know, just really educate both of us and our audience who's going to be listening to this. Is really going to be fascinating. So we'll start with one of you, Madeleine. I'll start with you. Where did this journey for you start? Where did you grow up? When did nature become sort of this big influence in your life, and how did you get involved in the projects you are now?
Well, it's a long story, as I've been working in the field for 30 years soon. So, but shortly, I grew up, as most people in Finland. We had a cottage, so we spent the week in the city going to school. And I grew up in the metropolitan area and then in the countryside during the weekends and the holidays. How did that actually influence me? And I think many of us is that both physically and mentally being in nature 24/7 for a long time means that you understand a lot about nature. You are dependent on nature and you learn to love it. And you learn to respect it. We lived in a simple way of life. So we took water from the sea or the well and used wherever was provided, such as fish and game, berries, mushrooms, and so on. So this is the way that many of us in this country still live. And so we have a deep respect and a high value for nature still today. But later in life, I decided to study biology, but I did professionalize in environmental toxicology, which is really not about wolves. It was looking into the toxic effects and impacts of environmental contamination in the Baltic Sea. So I was focusing a lot on the seals, actually, so marine biology.
So what made you veer from marine biology into wolves? What was the draw, or what kind of happened for you to switch?
Well, the large carnivores have been a part of, let's say, in the fringes of my work all the time, because I was working as a sea scientist in the Fisheries and Wildlife Research Institute for many years, and from there on, I spent some time as an official at the ministry in charge of the governance and management of game species in Finland. And there I was in charge of the game management plans for all the species. And one of them was the wolf. So I really became involved in the wolf management at that point. And that was in the early 2000s. And since then, wolves have been one of the game species to take into consideration when I have been working more with aerial plans, land use plans on state-owned land areas. And these areas are vast in Finland, so we have a lot of work to do and many wolves to take care of there as well.
Wow, that's fascinating. Mary, same for you. How did this journey begin? Where, same, were you native to Finland, same sort of growing up as Madeleine, or a little bit different? How did all these things come together for you?
Well, a bit different. I grew up in a dairy farm on the western area of Finland, so very small town, very sort of rural surroundings, and a lot of wildlife, bogs, mires, forests and fields, and so on. And I think that really sort of pushed me into this direction. I think obviously I greatly enjoyed the outdoors and spotting birds, going moose hunting with my dad and with his dog, and doing berry picking and mushroom picking, same as Madeleine. So a very sort of down to earth launch into life, I think.
So when you're, I'll stick with you, Mary, for a second, and then I'll jump back over to Madeleine. Is there sort of an ingrained sense of environmentalism or working the land in Finland that's sort of ingrained in the culture, where I think Madeleine said it pretty well, is that even if you grew up in sort of, you sort of move to the urban area as opposed to, you're growing up in these rural settings. So does that track for you? And then Madeleine, I'll jump over to you.
I think it used to be, maybe it's changing for the youngest generations now, that a lot of people are living in the bigger cities, and there's less and less people in the outskirt areas and rural areas. So maybe they are sort of losing a bit of that close connection, the closeness with the surrounding nature. But maybe Madeleine has a view to this as well.
Yes.
What do you think, Madeleine? Because you've been in this for, like you said, for over 3 decades. What have you seen, maybe a shift or a change?
Yeah, I do see a clear shift. I have been going to schools as well, teaching about the environment and biology, and I can see a clear change in the attitudes and in the values, but still it's kind of part of our genes in this country compared to many, many other countries, even in Europe, that we are still kind of a rural gang or a group of rural people, maybe living in cities, but still having this very close nature and respect, I would say, to nature.
What are some of what are the usual types of industries that occupy the rural areas of Finland? I mean, cattle farming, what types of agriculture?
From my point of view, I would say it's mostly forestry.
Mm.
We have vast areas of forests. We have a lot of lakes, and in those, fishing, yes, but it's very small scale. I wouldn't say that the farming has very little animal farming. It's mostly just crop growing, and it has also changed during the last decades a lot. So lots of the dairy farms have ceased their activities, and there is some sheep farming, I would say, mostly in Mari's area where she lives. But Mari, you can continue.
Yeah, I've noticed the same trend, that the dairy farms and the sort of meat production farms, their number are decreasing, even though the ones remaining will increase in size. But I think we still have relatively small scale production, so it's not common for the farmers to hire a lot of hands on the farm. So it's really sort of just bringing the bread for the family, and not necessarily a bigger group of people.
So just on this topic, what did your parents do for a living?
Well, mine, they had a dairy farm, but after sort of EU and everything happened, so there were demands to increase the production, so they changed, sort of stopped the farming. Really? And just, actually my father started to drive a dairy truck, so keeping in the business, but just changing a bit.
What about you, Madeleine? What were your parents, what was your lineage coming from?
My mother is a medical doctor, and my father is an economist.
Wow.
So academics,
so you guys have
both.
Wow. That's great. I mean, it's so amazing when we talk to different folks from different parts of the country and also the world, where they grew up and then how they find their way into these nature spaces. I mean, for both of you, it seems as though it was, I would say, a more natural transition into whether it was academia or, being with nature and studying nature or researching or managing because of how you grew up and where you grew up and the why inside of Finland. Mary, I want to begin with you, and then Madeleine, we'll switch over. Just describe your role, because we talked about the Finnish, that you're a senior planning officer for the Finnish Wildlife Agency. Talk to folks who are listening about what the role of the agency is, and then underneath that, what your role specifically means inside of the Finnish Wildlife Agency.
Our agency was established in 2011, so it was sort of reformed for this wildlife or game management, really, to be an independent institution that carries out a lot of public administrative tasks. So we work under the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry and basically promote sustainable game husbandry, but also coordinate the activities within the game management associations. This is really our grassroots level of the administration, so they are actually run by hunters themselves. Also, we see to the implementation of wildlife and game policies, including the management plans, for example, large carnivores, and we have a plan for the wolf, obviously, as well. My role is really related to these plans and the large carnivores to sort of support the implementation of those plans. And what I've mostly worked with before our LIFE BOREALWOLF project was with this stakeholder collaboration. And we have had this system of territory cooperation groups, which is basically really local level, municipality level people getting together to talk about the wolves in their area. How many there are there any problems, what to do about those things, how to help each other out and sort of share the information. And this really very comfortably brought me into this project as well, to have these stakeholders already established relationship with them to work with in the future. And it's been really great to have more resources via the project work to put efforts into this stakeholder collaboration.
And what level of priority is hunter interest in Finland when it comes to making wildlife decisions?
Well, the priorities are really the sustainable use, but also to produce welfare from those wildlife populations, to have that sustainable hunting quotas and we do have a strong representation of hunters in these flora that really decides these matters, but also we have forest and forestry and sort of farming producers organizations come into play. We have nature conservation associations, especially on national level, that are being heard. So it's really there is multiple levels of discussions, and it's not really just top down, but more of a discourse of how to manage things in a best way.
So, Mary, for you, and we spoke with Daniel Malwitz from Sweden, is your role in the agency, or the agency's role overall, is it strictly just the management end of game and large carnivores as opposed to research, which I think is more Madeleine's side? So is that typically what your agency is there for?
Yeah, exactly. So we are really working with the implementation of the management plan, and also we support the data collection. So we have a lot of volunteer networks to collect data on the game species, and this obviously is done in close collaboration with the research institute that then again has the responsibility to estimate game population, and it's being given by the ministry. So we are sort of actually rather a tight family working under the ministry under the sort of title of Game Consortium to try and manage these species in a clever and well thought way.
And does your direction come from now? And obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know global politics too well. Do your directives come from the ministry or inside of Finland, or are your directives coming from the EU in terms of management? Where does that all come from?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question for us. So EU legislation is implemented in the member states' law, also in Finland. But so I would say both. So we have the Finnish management schemes that comply with the EU rules, but also we have national legislation. For example, the length of the hunting season or quotas, and what is the structure of our administration, who gets to do what kind of role. For example, it is then stated that our agency is the one to issue derogation on large carnivores. And so all these national rules also define our work.
And is it similar to, and this is what we're just taking from what we spoke with Daniel about, is it looking at tracking, collected, and I guess you don't do the collection, so tracking wolf density, things of that sort, and then if there's any sort of depredation, or if there's, there's not a lot of livestock, it seems, in Finland, but if there's some sort of, cross-section between wolves and humans, whether it be, domestic dogs or sheep or something, is that kind of the track where you guys are also involved in?
So we are working with depredation in the same way as Daniel and his colleagues, but it's really this LIFE project is the thing that has given us the resources to go into the farms and visit them and help them out and try to help with the planning of preventive work. But we mainly just share information, and then via our agency we deliver the materials for electric fences. But for monitoring purposes, we are in a supportive role. So it's really the research institute that figures out the numbers, but we try to coordinate the volunteer network to do the data gathering, both for the DNA samples of the wolf, but also for the observations of all large carnivore species.
Wow.
So I think what Daniel and his colleagues do is more hands-on in monitoring terms, as we are more in the background. I
mean, it does seem like you guys are tight-knit. Madeleine, I want to switch to you too, so thank you for being patient.
Don't worry.
So we go back and forth. Describe, if you can, describe the makeup of where I guess the wolf population density sits in Finland. I believe there is some there is some movement between countries, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So just give everybody sort of a backdrop of what, if they're looking at the wolf population from a zoom out level in Finland, what are they looking at and how does everything sit?
Well, if you go back in history a bit, like in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have that many wolves. And if you go back 100 years, we did have wolves. We have always had wolves, but just a few ones during the last decades. And they were all more or less situated on the eastern border to Russia, in that area. And then as a result of the nature conservation laws from the EU in the 1990s, the wolf became strictly protected, and we stopped the hunting for the wolf, and it spread, it dispersed, and it also grew. And it dispersed to the more western parts of the country. And if you look at the map today, you will find the densest areas of wolves in the southwestern part of the country, so in a completely different part of the countries compared to previously. And of course, this spread, this distribution, new distribution, has also led to a more common sharing of the landscapes with the humans, because humans are mostly populated in the southwestern parts of the country, so the same area as the wolf today. The wolves have become, let's say, urbanized. They are very used to humans, many of them. You see them in the streets, and you see them also in the countryside. It's common. People are getting used to them slowly in this part of the country. And we have depredations, we have problems with worried parents, of course, because in Finland, children move freely around and they go to school on their own. And they take a bus for many kilometers away from the school. So they are on their own the whole day, and they meet wolves as well on the bus stops and everywhere. So of course, we have had a lot of discussions with schools and parents about how to find solutions on living together with the wolves in these kind of areas. But then we also have areas where the acceptance of wolves is much lower, and there is a very clear discourse, especially a political discourse on the EU not having the right to make such demands on how we are supposed to live in our country. So it depends very much in what part of the country we live and how it is accepted.
So when you look at this, and it seems there's some similarity to, I would say, the Western United States, where there are pockets of people that accept wolves, are okay with, the reintroduction efforts, are okay with naturally moving populations. And obviously there are some that have a lower social carrying capacity or tolerance for that. What types of initiatives or solutions, when you talk about this intersection between humans and wolves in a very close setting, it seems more so in Finland than I would say here in the United States, what are some of those things that are being discussed about, within schools, about, like you were saying, with the kids moving about, with people moving about? It almost seems, from my perspective at least, that the wolves in Finland are acting or are more urbanized like coyotes are here in the United States, where coyotes are very much everywhere, and wolves seem to have adapted that way in Finland. Is that accurate? And what other things are coming up?
Partly, yes, especially in the southwestern part of the country where the territories are getting smaller and smaller because the population is so dense, and then there aren't that vast forestal remote areas where they could live. So that's kind of the challenge in that part of the country. And what comes out of it? Well, as long as there is enough food sources for the wolves over there, we have a very dense population of ungulates, and so the depredation level is low. But of course, with the increasing wolf population, we also get more of the problems with farming. And that's one of the main things. The other main conflict is about hunting, because the traditional hunting in Finland, especially ungulate hunting, involves free-ranging dogs. We use a lot of dogs because we have vast areas here. And they are very good food for the wolves. So also in this project, we have been working with trying to find solutions on how to discuss with the hunters on different ways of hunting, and also how to protect the dogs.
So when you talk about density and when you talk about the population size, is there a rough estimate of, and I know numbers sometimes are misleading or however you want to call it, but if you could encapsulate the density or the population of the wolves in Finland, what would you say you're looking at? A few hundred? Are you upwards of 1,000? Lower than that? Where does it kind of settle in Finland in these dense areas?
Well, we are having roughly about 300 wolves at the moment in Finland. It's growing very, very slowly because of the social carrying capacity. But what we do is we follow up the territories, how many territories we have. That's what we are looking at and focusing on. And we're using the DNA sampling in the winter season when the population is at its smallest. So it's not comparable, for instance, to the Swedish way of estimating. And we also use observations. And then we have all this estimation modeling, mathematical modeling that is telling us about roughly where we are. One good thing with this kind of sampling is that we use volunteers for this. We have hundreds of people helping us out both in DNA sampling and in observation. And that means that they are engaged in the population estimate. And previously, when this didn't happen, we had a lot of debate, political debate on how many wolves do we have, how many wolves do we want to have, and also a lack of trust towards the scientists on the number of wolves. But now, as we have the volunteers involved in the whole setup of sampling and estimation of the wolf population, this discussion has stopped more or less. There is, we get the people on board this way.
Got it.
On the subject of the domestic hunting dog mortality, are they being killed while hunting wolves, or are they being actively hunted by wolves while the dogs are hunting something else?
They are killed while the dogs are hunting something else.
I see. So it's a foods. You consider it a food source, not a retaliation or a defense.
Mary, you know more about this in detail, but I would say some of the dogs are killed even in the home yards of people's homes. And then many of them are killed during the hunting itself.
Yeah, so it used to be a bigger problem when people get the dogs on a the leash that can run on a zebra line, and or just letting them go freely out on their business in the night when it's dark and they would not come back. But nowadays, a bigger portion of the let's say 50 to 60 dogs that we lose annually is due to the hunting situations. So typically hunting moose, hunting hare, hunting foxes or grouse, the dogs will go into an area where they meet wolf or several wolves, and either because it's seen as a food resource or just as a competitor for the prey resources, the wolves will take the dog out, so to speak.
Wow. What kind of dogs are Finnish hunters usually hunting with? Is there a breed that's used most often, or?
Well, there's a wide range, actually. Now that we are testing these protective vests, we have maybe, let's say, 30 different breeds.
Wow.
But it's like Spitz, baying dogs in general. Also, the ones with the floppy ears, like hound breeds. So I'd say there's a wide variety. But maybe I'd say the bigger the dog, the bigger threat or bigger risk it is for the wolf to engage in attack. And also the behavior of the dog may have an effect. So it shouldn't be overly aggressive, but not too timid either. But these are sort of guesswork because we don't really know a lot of these cases how they play down or what happens in the situations.
Wow. So when you're looking at coexistence measures, Mary, because you mentioned the fencing a couple of times, what are the parameters for funding these types of measures, preventative measures, I would say, for these types of things? And is fencing the main one, or are there other types that are being looked at, tested out in terms of preventing these types of interactions per se? Obviously, you can't prevent when someone goes out to hunt. It's kind of, I assume there's a known risk for those that go out and hunt with hounds or dog, whatever it is, understanding that you may not come back with your dog. But what are some of the other things that are being worked on in terms of preventing these types of interactions, I guess, on the home front as opposed to out in the wild?
For the domestic production animals, it's really the electric fences that are your go-to measure here as well. But whenever it's there are wolves or other large carnivores moving around the area, and their farmer has as a source of income these animals, so it's not just a hobby, and they usually will get the fence materials, but they will have to put the fences up themselves. And in Life Borealwolf, we've tried to promote other ways as well, but like sound and light deterrence. But as you probably well know, there's really a short-term solution, so they're not a replacement to be used instead of fences, but maybe a good help and a tool when the situation is really tough and you've had a depredation and you're expecting the wolves to return to the site. So in these kind of situations, we really try to promote them as well, and flag free and camera traps to help you to surveil the area.
Okay.
If a Finnish hunter is out in the backcountry or the wild and their dog is being attacked by a wolf, can they respond with lethal action, or do they have any tools to use at that moment that could save their dog, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's stated in the police law that you are allowed to defend your property, including the dog, in a case that the wolf should attack or the attack seems imminent. So there's no way of preventing it. It will. The situation will then continue so that the police will have to investigate to see whether it was a crime against the hunting law or not. But I don't know of a case where they ever prosecuted the hunter for this. So it's really just a process that they go through.
I would just say that if you lose your dog, you will get reimbursed also, and also that the fences are free, so they don't have to pay anything.
Okay.
How does the agency dictate the value of a dog? How does that work?
Well, there's a whole chart for it based on the sort of success in these different kind of tests and dog shows and so on.
Got it.
Wow.
Are they looking into? I know livestock guardian dogs have become a source of non-lethal deterrence here in the United States. Is that I would think is that something that's being looked at in Finland as well, along with fencing? Obviously, larger dogs. You just said before, Mary, too. The larger the dog, the less there's probably going to be an altercation or an interaction. Is that something that's being thought of as well in terms of giving, or at least covering some of the cost of raising or giving dogs to people who are in areas that they might see depredation?
Well, it's not currently under consideration to subsidize or support that, but we do have some individual farmers that are already using that option to have livestock guarding dogs. It's not very common though, so it may be that the pastures are very scattered in the landscape. You have a small amount of animals, or they are in different places at the same time. And also we have this thing of every person's right to move around anywhere, and majority of the land is privately owned, but you are still allowed to move in those areas. Obviously not in the pasture to disturb grazing animals, but right outside. So you might have these situations where the people just try to interact with the dogs, not knowing that you're not supposed to do that, and it might turn out bad.
Madeleine, on your end, when you're looking at the Paxa population and the collection of any of the DNA that you guys are getting, what are the main research goals that you guys are looking to accomplish? Are you looking at strictly pack size, pack density, and just to sort of track what's going on? Do you guys use collars? What's kind of the main research that you guys are trying to accomplish in Finland when it comes to the wolf population there?
Well, as I said previously, I'm not a wolf scientist, so I can only say what the research institute is doing at the moment.
Sure.
And we have different statutory obligations. So one main obligation is population monitoring, and we monitor all game species. So many species, and wolf is just one of them. But that's just one basic task that we have. Then we have scientific research also on large carnivores, but also on many other issues, of course, that is concerning game and hunting. And for the wolves at the moment, we are studying, for instance, the impact of land use, like windmill farms on the wolf behavior and wolf packs. And then we are developing different kinds of methods for estimating, for actually tools and methods for governance and decision making on different kind of management decisions. So how would you implement multi-species management in the best way, taking into consideration ecological, sociological, and economical factors, things like that. So we are working in many different fields, and the wolf is here and there as a part of it, but also basic wolf biology, of course, pedigrees and so on, studying the dispersal of different wolves and their heritage, and of course a lot about the spread between Russia, Finland, and also the Fennoscandian borders. How are they dispersed between the countries, and is it one population or many populations, and so on and so on.
Have you, I think I asked this to, I was talking to Cecilia Di Bernardi, and I think she had an answer to this, but have you in the research that's happening when you talk about dispersal, has there been any thoughts, and this may be future research and that's fine, have we seen that the population from Russia and Finland have sort of cycled within itself, like they're moving back and forth, or are you guys not aware of that just yet in terms of how the populations are moving between the two countries?
We know it quite well from quite far back, because we have been exchanging samples with Russia for years and years. Not at the moment, of course, because the border is closed, but we have a long engagement with a scientist on the Russian side. So we know a lot about the Russian wolf population, and it is the same population as ours. But we have also studied a lot on in the northern parts of the country, with the dispersal from Russia to Finland to Norway and Sweden. And yes, there are individuals traveling across there all the time. The question is if they survive at the end of the day, and where they settle down, if they do. And some have been successful, as we all know. But the challenges with the common Nordic policy of large carnivore management is that we have the reindeer herding area up in the north, and they have they are prioritized in a different way compared to other land users, let's say, or farmers, and they have free-ranging animals. And so we have in Finland a policy that we don't want to have stable wolf populations in the Nordic areas. So we don't have a problem with animals passing through, but we don't. There is not a commitment to increase the population of wolves in the Nordic part of the country.
And maybe also comment on that it's very hard for the wolves to pass through the area without causing substantial damage via killing reindeers, because it's a relatively easy prey for them, being semi-domestic and all. And then consequently, our agency will get an application for derogation on the wolf, and we will then comply, and the wolves will be removed. But what we know from our rather extensive DNA sampling nowadays, that we are covering majority of the territories, we see that a lot of these individuals that get removed are not individuals that we would know from our previous censusing, and not also from the Norwegian or Swedish population, because we have the same we share information with them. So then we can sort of deduce that they come mostly from the Russian side.
Got it.
Yeah, just not saying that, not maybe mostly, but still a lot of the individuals.
So you remove more wolves from that area, or how do you manage for that specific area differently? I mean, is there just more liberal hunting laws, or you just end up removing more wolves more frequently, or how do you manage for lower numbers up north?
Yeah, so the legislation is different. We are under Annex 5 of the EU Habitats Directive in that area, which allows for more freedom in dispensing the derogative permits. And this consequently means that we are able to remove more individuals in that area.
And how do reindeer utilize the land? Are they transnational migrators, I guess, or do they spend a lot of time in Finland up north, or what's their kind of pattern?
Well, they move in the rather small scale of area. So you have these individual, maybe Madeleine knows the term for this, but these sort of local level associations for the herders within which they try to herd their own reindeers in that area. So it's not transnational, but it's just a similar system between Finland, Sweden, and Norway.
And I could add that many of the reindeers do cross the borders as they wish, and so it's also a collaboration between the herders in the different countries, depending on the season of the year.
And I don't remember. I don't know if you mentioned it, but how many? What is the reindeer population up there? How big of a herd is this?
Yeah, I think it's close to 200,000.
Oh wow!
So maybe approximately the same amount of white-tailed deer that we have in southwest Finland, which is then the courtesy of our Finnish immigrants moving to Minnesota way back when, and then they send us a small gift that has now sort of multiplied a lot and produced this very strong population of wolves as an sort of afterwave.
That's enormous.
That's pretty crazy. Madeleine, when you talk about, because it's not, as you said, it's not just about wolf research, it's about, I guess, more ecosystem research and like how to balance all that. I know this is a generalized question, but what are the things you have to keep in mind when trying to balance something like an ecosystem that's managed by different governing bodies? What, like, you know what I mean? How does it work for you and your colleagues or the institute to make sure that all these things are being met, I guess, in terms of either management or ecology and things of that sort? I know it's a loaded question, if you can pick that apart.
Yeah, it's not that easy. Well,
I bet, yeah.
I would say that the research institute has a role of providing information and background information, fact-based, of course, from a very, very wide perspective. And we are also obliged to provide policy advice for decision makers. But as we live in a country with a transparent democracy, all processes that we do require a very large engagement of different stakeholders, different interest groups, and also different scientists. So usually the processes are quite slow when we make different kinds of evaluations because we need to engage all around the same table. But on the other hand, we get a quite well-balanced picture of what's going on and what the situation looks like. And also, I would say today the science and the scientific work is very much dependent on the financing instruments, and many of the instruments require transdisciplinary science, cross-sectoral science, and so on. And so that's where we are going at the moment. We're taking in a lot of social sciences and economic sciences into the biological sciences, I would say more like that at the moment. But then it depends also very much, is it the initiative of the scientific question, is it coming from a scientist or is it coming from the government? Because we are also asked to do many different projects and evaluations and provide them with some kind of background information that is kind of straightforward. They have a question that we need to answer. So it depends a little bit also on who is asking.
That seems it's the same. It's the same here. It's, who's at, you're right. Who's asking the question? What type of data set or research are they looking for? And how does it pertain to the public as a whole? it really it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, that there is it seems a very good working relationship between research and management, in that it seems as though you're both looking for the same type of end goal, which is to have a population there of game species, of carnivore of wolf species, of wolves, and to make sure that it's managed at a fairly regular level, so that the social carrying capacity for the balance of this ecosystem can continue along a path of a little bit more acceptance. Does that seem to track with either of you, or one have a differing opinion there, depending upon where you look at it, whether it's for research end or agency end? What do you guys think?
I would say that you are quite right there, but we have to remember that the Natural Resource Institute is kind of is studying natural resources. We also have the universities that are completely independent, and they study questions from very different angles. But being a governmental research institute, we have a very close connection to the society and the governmental institutions. And so, yes, we mostly focus on their questions, to answer their questions. So maybe from that point of view, yes, we work very closely together because we have the same kind of policy background and governance system. But we also have other institutions studying the wolf, studying the coexistence and conflicts from completely different angles.
Right. What do you think, Mary?
I think you nailed it in terms of the game consortium participants, so our agency and the research institute of that we call LUKE, that we really work looking into the same direction and on the path that has been sort of pinpointed by the directive and the favorable conservation status requirement that we have, and we share these goals of making the coexistence easier and trying to find tools and ways to make it work better. And what has really happened during our LIFE BOREALWOLF project is I feel that this collaboration has become more close. We have had the resources and time and opportunities to have more of this dialogue and more of this collaboration and sharing information to the public, so that you get the sort of best or not necessarily the best, but even just better service to the people asking questions and wanting to know more about the wolf and its management and why things are run by the way they are.
What is the best way that both of you, I'll start with you, Mary, and then Madeleine, you can certainly jump in. What's the best way that you've seen that it seems as though straightforward information and this is what's happening and transparency is the way to go? Is there certain things that the agency does, or Madeleine, on your end, that you guys do to make sure that the public is as informed as possible, so that they get, like you said, the most accurate, correct information? These are the guidelines. This is what's happening. This is what's being worked on. What is the best way that you facilitate that information to the public?
I think with the LIFE project, we have had a lot more output in forms of publications and guidelines and also on social media, different kind of posts that really reach to a certain niche of the public for sure. But I feel that we are always faced with the demand of more and more and more. So we never reach everybody, and there's always somebody who hasn't necessarily had those situations where they would come across a wolf or its tracks, and it's a new thing in their area, and just now it becomes relevant, and just now they want the information, and they feel that it's not being offered to them in an easy, accessible way. But what we've done with these territory groups that I mentioned earlier is that we've organized these regional level seminars where we've invited the group members, but also other stakeholders like municipality administration or different stakeholders from this area to meet with each other. We'll have presentations about the wolf and large carnivore management for them, but we really want to have time also for them to discuss and to network so that they know each other and they can talk about these issues and then be more connected and be able to spread the information from one stakeholder to one another, but also really just share the information to their peers. So whoever is working with them or whomever they meet while they are working on matters related to the wolf and this conflict that we are considered to have. So I think that's been a great addition that we've brought along with this project.
I would maybe continue saying that we have already established national and regional stakeholder boards that have been discussing these matters for 20 years, more or less. So there are different kinds of fora where these issues have been taken up, and we always share fact-based information to them in those meetings. In the project, we also piloted a wildlife patrol consisting of a police officer and a ranger, and they patrol the area with the highest risk of illegal killings of large carnivores. But what we really learned with this was that it was the role of community policing that was more important. People really have a feeling that these police are there to answer their needs, and they attend local meetings, they listen, they drink what we say a lot of coffee. They have time to engage and to share information with the locals, and this way build a trust there. And I think this is very, very important. We have learned throughout many of our activities that being in the field, being local, being there, showing a face and being empathic is much more important than sharing fact information that is fact-based, actually. Because at the end of the day, when people are really worried, they don't care if the wolf is brown or red or black. They care about their worries and fears, and they care about their schools and you know, their lives.
Right.
And also we have been doing a lot of communication to schools, media, and politicians, mostly the MPs, and we use many different methods, and they have all turned out very well. And people are coming to our events and so on. But the problem is that these people change. The children change in the schools, the teacher changed, the media changed, the politicians changed. So we really need to do this as a part of the everyday management. And that's not possible with the present financial situation. It's kind of too burdensome. We cannot continue. We have done it in this project, yes, and it has been fruitful, but I must say that it's not the way to go on after the project. We have to find another way. And then Mari was talking about the early warning method, and that was about when the wolf is new to an area. You know, there is kind of a time. It's a phenomenon that changes with time. So when the wolf is coming to a new area, people get very worried, and there's a lot of discussion, especially in the social media. People are worried, people don't know. So then it is really important to put in efforts into sharing information. And what we have done is we have organized these public events, local public events that are open for anyone. And instead of just going there and telling them what to do and what the wolf is all about and, you know, shut up and go home. No, that's not what we do. We have a kind of a small start with telling who we are and what we do. But then after that, we have this open session where people can go and ask a police officer, ask a manager, ask a scientist. And so the situation is calming down with these kinds of happenings. And we have found that they are really worthwhile putting money and time on.
What she said, I absolutely echo that. So very much the same observation from our agency. The people that we've hired for the project, it's been like very valuable work that they put in, all the hours working like in the field and meeting people.
And you mentioned speaking to police or directing questions to police. Does your police force handle wildlife-related concerns, or do you have an agency similar to our Fish and Wildlife?
In the state-owned areas, we have game wardens, but
Game
that's
wardens,
just
yeah.
for the. But outside of that, it's the police that is called to come and see about a situation where a carnivore is behaving in a bold manner, is causing a safety threat for people. But if it's like just a courtyard visit or tracks overnight occurring on the road, then it's our agency that then looks into the situations and tries to see whether this is repetitive and if there's something to be done about it. But in terms of like acute situations of threat to human safety, then it's the police. But interestingly, we have this again volunteer system of hunters who are trained to take care of situations, for example, vehicle collisions with large carnivores, and they have a contract with the police and this phone number that they will be on call. So whenever there's a crash with a bear or a wolf, they will come and take care of it, because the police don't necessarily have the know-how or even the weaponry to do that. So it's a effective and safe way to take care of this, and again, a nice way for the hunting community to pay back or give back to the society as they do get to hunt on the people's land and so on.
It does seem that from I guess the history of it seems like this is a community-wide effort, and that the more involved it seems people are, and I'm sure there'll be individuals or folks that listen to this and I think worry about the hunting aspect of wolves in general. But do either of you find, and you probably already answered this, and you kind of did anyway, but I just want to hammer it home, that it seems as though the more the community is involved and the more that, like you said, Madeleine, there's these workshops or these open town forums, and Mary, that the agency is working in unison with folks, that the more that people are involved and understand the criteria around management and wildlife, that people seem to be more socially tolerant of ecosystems and things of that and how stuff is supposed to work, as opposed to the way it may be done in other countries. Does that resonate? I don't know if that resonates or not.
Yeah, I'd say they have more patience then, and more of this tolerance to inconveniences when they feel that they are being heard and their concerns are taken seriously. So definitely, yeah, it's an important thing to be around and be available to them. But as Madeleine said, it's also a question about the resources. So currently we've been able to do this at a certain level, but I feel that it might be difficult to continue. So we'll see how it goes. And also we are expecting still the population obviously to grow, both for the wolf, but also for the bear and lynx, as we have this situation that the quota hunt system that we've had for decades on lynx and bears is not currently on the table. There's been some national court rulings to sort of block this out. And so we are expecting maybe there will be repercussions on those species as well. And how do we need to manage those?
Wow.
I would echo Mary and say that you are on the right track for most species. So we are managing all the species the same way. The wolf is not, managed in a different way from other game species. So for 90% of the species, we have a very nice collaboration. We have a nice understanding and an acceptance from the society on how we work. But I would say that with the wolf management, we have not been that successful. And we have been studying the reasons behind it. And we have been trying to understand why is the wolf so different from the other species? And why are we not successful? And there are many many studies on that, and maybe we could try to describe it as an institutional misfit, because the wolf management is a wicked problem in the society, and that means that there is a lack of trust towards the government in charge. And it has many reasons and a long history. But what happens in a society with a wicked problem, with many different interest groups having many different aims and goals that cannot be answered, then many groups use also this kind of a conflict as a political tool for other political agendas and discourses. Yeah. And it flames up now and then. And it can flame up due to very unexpected happenings and phenomena. And so we have understood that we need to manage the wolf through this crisis management set of toolbox. That we have to be ready for these unexpected rushes and medial exercises, because they come suddenly all the time, and they are not very logical always. So what we are trying to use is the management plan. And the whole idea with the management plan is that they function as a social agreement on how the Finnish people want to manage their population. And preparing this is very cumbersome and lengthy because of these transparent democracy rules that we have to do. But in the long run, it is a sealed agreement with the official government official stakeholders supporting it. And it's very interesting that for 90% of the species it works very nicely. But then for the wolf, we have been having to update it continuously. And still we are not there. So we have a challenge, even though we have been talking today about how nicely we work together. We do have some hurdles on the way.
And we do have that same phenomena as many other countries, that there is the polarized ends that keep shouting at each other from the from the far back, and in their trenches, very much sticking to their own views of the situation. So I think there's a big gray mass in the middle that we should also cater to and provide information, but also acknowledge that majority of those people, they don't have necessarily a strong opinion about the wolves towards one side or another. So they are maybe thinking that it's a nice addition to the sort of biodiversity and original species that belongs to this area, but they don't have anything else to say about it. So it's also a fact that it's those people that are affected by the species that have most to lose or most to say about it.
But we have we have made inquiries or surveys on the attitude of the Finnish people on wolves, and a majority of the Finnish people are very positive or neutral to wolves. That's not the issue. The issue is the management, the wolf management.
Right.
That's an interesting caveat from us here in North America, because that's not, I don't know, maybe there is some parallels there, because I think the majority of people in this country believe the same thing, is that wolves they're either neutral or semi-positive to wolves. I would say the majority. There's obviously the camps that are, negative towards, and like you said, Mary, on the polar opposites of, the gray middle, where, most people are sort of like, we'll deal with it as it comes. I wanted to give both of you a chance, if there was something that that you want to end on, if there was something that we didn't touch on for either of you. I'll start with Mary first, and then I'll go to Madeleine. Just something you want to end on with anybody who's listening to this, from your perspective about, the Finnish Wildlife Agency, yourself, anything that you want to end on that we didn't maybe get to.
Maybe just to raise the point that in Finland, with the situation that we have with the wolves and this human-wildlife conflict, it's surprisingly crucial or a relevant part is this depredation on the hunting dogs, because hunters, we have 300,000 of them, which is like huge portion of our 5.5 million population. So they are very often using dogs, and if they don't have a dog of their own, somebody else in the group will surely have. So it's a very sort of natural extension to the hobby, and they are considered family members and sleep on your couch after the long day out in the forest and so on. So having depredation on these dogs and having to change your ways of hunting, restricting your hunting opportunities, or not even being able to hunt in your own area at all, is really felt heavily on the hunters. And I think the rural communities are still rather tight, and they have this solidarity towards one another. So if you're not a hunter, you may still feel strongly about having the risk of depredation on the hunting dogs, and this really is one of the key issues. So if we would have some magical fix to prevent this from happening, we would fare a lot better, because it obviously affects the way we manage our ungulates. The dogs are an essential part of that puzzle, and altogether really a big impact on, for example, the vehicle collision system that I mentioned, these volunteers, because they will need to train their dogs somehow, and if they run the risk of having depredation because of the wolves, they will want to stop, and then we will have no volunteers no more. So it's a vast impact on the whole system when you look at the management of game species altogether.
Yeah. What about you, Madeleine?
Well, maybe I would like to bring up the future scenario. We are also now in the phase in the project to to kind of evaluate how far did we get and what will happen after the project has ended. And we have been starting to make some kind of estimations on what kind of resources and competencies do we need in Finland in order to manage the wolf in a best possible way in the future, when we will estimate that we will maybe have the double amount or even triple amount of wolves in the future, because that is the way we are going, and we need to prepare for that. And in my humble view, I would say that we would need to focus more and more on the human-human conflict. We would need more competencies within the social sciences, within how to resolve conflicts, how to deal with crisis management and so on. Maybe shift the focus a little bit away from the wolves and more into the human-human interactions and politics and media and so on, so that we have a resilient system that is not so sensitive to phenomena in the society in the future.
Yeah, both incredible points. My last question for both of you, I'll start with you, Madeleine, is when you hear the word wolf, what is the thing that comes to your mind?
Work at the moment. A lot of work. Yes.
What about you, Mary? When you hear the word wolf, what comes to your mind?
The same, and also I'm an ecologist by background, so I always think of this like the role of the wolf in the trophic cascade and how it's a strong predator working in a collaboration within the pack and clever hunting strategies and so on. So maybe a fellow moose hunter thinking about another moose hunter.
That's good. Oh man, this really can't thank both of you enough for your time and your incredible insight and knowledge to the situations and the challenges that are happening over in Finland. You both have been fantastic guests, and we can't thank you both enough for being on with Stephen and I to discuss all this. Yeah. And we'd love to do it again sometime soon, hopefully. Thank you both for everything.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Of course. Hang tight while we sign off. How's Steel out there? We'll be with you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.